Welcome to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, 5-time Voice Arts Awards nominee, David Brower.
Thanks, Alan. This is David Brower with your 20-minute podcast. Our special guest from Victorville, California, and he wishes he was back home in Hawaii, is David Seeley. David, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Beautiful day here.
Oh my gosh, it's great to hear your voice. I'm fascinated by all the things I've read about you. Founder, CEO of the International Entrepreneurs Association. You've reinvented yourself 3 times over the years, from corporate management to real estate investment to an entrepreneur for the last 70 years. You're working on a Guinness World Record on writing books. Your wife, Sonia, and you celebrating 60 years of marriage. You're an accomplished professional speaker. And the 2 most important things, number 1, you guys have been married for 60 years, and number 2, you're in great health. So congratulations on both of those and all the other celebrations. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Nice to be on board.
So let's talk, and we talked briefly before we went on the show. David is such an accomplished guy and so interesting. I really do want to schedule some other podcasts about your topic. So we'll start today on the entrepreneurship, and you've been doing that for 70 years. You're 80 years old. So how does the math work on that?
Well, I think actually, I think people are blessed with what I loosely call the DNA of an entrepreneur. And I had my first business when I was 10 years old as a stamp collector, and I learned very quickly if you bought a stamp, this was in England, and in those days you were collecting, old stamps, and I could buy a stamp and make a 50% profit or 100% profit at school. So I had a thriving little business at school, and always the envy of the kids in the yard who were either trying to copycat or didn't understand or jealous. Either way, it didn't make any difference.
Didn't make any difference, that's right.
That was my first entrepreneurial fling in way back.
And at 10 years old, that had to give you some confidence that you had never experienced before.
Well, very true, and that's a good point you're making there, because confidence, when you have little successes in your life, you begin to build confidence. And I grew up in abject poverty with no heat, no running water, no light, or nothing. It was just bare bones.
Yeah.
And that teaches you some stuff. It gives you a sort of a steely resistance to some of the stuff that comes down in life later on. And of course, everyone has their baggage, and we've had our share.
Sure.
And so, but it's allowed us to be really fortified and see things from a different perspective. Sometimes when somebody would capitulate, we just dig in and fight back. And that's I think that all comes from basically the role modeling you had, and hopefully from parents, which I didn't have, but hopefully for other people, from parental role modeling. So important.
Absolutely right. And I think the other part, and I'm kind of guessing here, but my sense is that when you found your wife 60 years ago, the world changed in so many ways for you and for her, obviously. But let's talk about how you guys met and how she has helped you as I'm sure your silent partner, right, over the years?
Yeah, not so silent.
I'm married to one of those. It's awesome.
I've learned 2 very operative words in my relationship with my wife, and that is that you learn to be able to say yes, dear.
Yes.
And seriously though, I was a very young district manager with a phone company in Canada, and she was one of my operators. We had, I think, 9 offices and about 86 employees, and my people skills at that point were very bad, but she got my number and dialed in, and we've been together ever since.
See, I think that's one of the great quotes of all time. She got your number.
She did.
And she has had your number ever since, right?
Yeah. Well, spiritually, I believe that, marriages are made in heaven. Mine certainly has been. We're on the same wavelength in so many areas, and we enjoy each other because we appreciate our differences.
Yeah.
And jokingly, we were saying a few minutes ago, she can be quite vocal, and it's learning to respect each other and appreciate each other for your differences, and being able to compromise where you need to in order to make things continue to be, pleasant and livable.
Absolutely right. And I'm echoing your relationship being so blessed in mine as well. We Karen and I are polar opposites in so many ways. She'd rather hike in Rocky Mountain National Park for hours and days, and I'd rather ride my Harley in 50 states. But we have the same servant heart, and that's what brought us together, and God brought us together with that same servant heart, and we are blessed to have the same kind of relationship, at least description-wise, that you're talking about, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable to me. It's absolutely remarkable.
Right. We're blessed. We really are.
Yeah.
We've had the good fortune of being able to help a lot of people in our walk in life, to be able to share some of the things that we've done together that actually can help people. And that includes, one of our websites, which I can share with you later on if you want, but I got a relationship site that allows people to be able to evaluate their relationship, and they can take a free test and so on.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to skip the entrepreneurial discussion for another podcast, and let's talk about relationships and askdavidhow.com, because our conversation is certainly organically headed in that direction, and I'd like to keep it going there if that's okay.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
So askdavidhow.com, that's the site, correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
right. And on that site, you can take individually a free test.
Mm-hmm.
The test is 10 questions, and you self-scoring 1 through 10, hopefully with some objectivity.
Yes.
And at the end of it, you score, and you just trade scores. You trade sheets of paper, and then you begin to realize that you have differences. Hopefully, you realize it before that.
Right,
but,
right.
And probably wouldn't be taking the test if you weren't interested in getting some answers. So then from that, you can then move on to 2 areas. Now, I'll share with you and your audience 2 things that we've learned that are part of that site. There's 2. This is sort of a pay-to-play to learn, basically.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And, we like to give back, so most of it goes to charity. But we have developed 2 techniques that really are helpful. One is what we call 95-5, and these are areas of mental thinking, basically.
Okay.
95-5 meaning this. Most people spend 95% of their time focusing on the problem. They just grind away on the problem, and maybe 5% on the solution. Right. And that could be more. Who knows? But so what we do, and we've always done it now for years, is we reverse that. When a problem comes up, we obviously quickly identify it, and we write it down, and then we agree to establish 10 ways, 1 through 10, on how to attack that problem in a positive way.
Oh, wow.
There's absolutely zero point in trying to grind out it by arguing about the problem.
Right.
So you switch the focus. And what happens is it's a wonderful thing, because once you switch your focus, you get some power from that, and you get some creativity and imagination, and all of a sudden positivity kicks in, and you begin to work on solutions rather than the problem.
Well, it's fascinating. I'm going to spend some time looking at that, because it's fascinating to me how that process very quickly helps to take the emotion out of it and put you both on the same page as far as figuring out a way collectively, together, appropriately, to figure out what that problem is and then come up with solutions to address it. I love that.
Yeah. Well, that's point 1. And point 2 is, boys and girls communicate differently.
Yes.
And some brainiac figured out through research that women need to get about 3,000 to 4,000 words a day out in order to feel fulfilled. And I know that's true. But here's the opposition. The opposition.
All right.
A guy can get by with 1,200 to 1,500 words. So typically, he'll go to work. He's busy all day interacting with the staff people, talking and whatever they're doing. Comes home basically emotionally full at that point.
Right.
I mean, full up, or maybe even fed up. Okay.
Right.
And
right. Yeah.
Just wants to come home to the man cave, and here he's being greeted by maybe a candlelight dinner or whatever. And then all of a sudden, no, I want my privacy. I want my time. So here's what we did on that one, because and it's very real, by the way, because the emotional content of discussion very often gets lost because of the intensity of the emotion by the person having that emotion.
Agreed.
And so what we did, we put a numerical score on the emotional chart. And by that, I'll give you a quick demo.
Great.
Let's supposing, I'll use myself as an example. I come home and we get into a discussion about something that's gone on for the day that I'm very hot on emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe she's switched off, maybe she's heard it all before, but I say to her this, sweetheart, this is a 9.2 on the emotional scale. 10 being a devastation. Now, you can't cry wolf, but she certainly understands 9.2.
Absolutely.
Everybody relates to a numerical scale.
Right.
And whereas the emotions, if they're being discussed verbally, you can have conflict because you're using different words and all that stuff. But on the numerical scale, there is no misunderstanding, none.
I love that, and the other part of that, as you said, we men and women speak differently, but we also listen differently, and so
correct.
By having that correct or that balanced numerical score that both of you can immediately relate to, it changes the course of the conversation. I love that.
Correct. Well, then you have a deeper understanding of the emotional content of the person you're talking with.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
and it works.
Absolutely, I can see that. So how did you two develop that over time, and a problem here, a problem there? I mean, it had to take some really, really great conversation to be able to pull this together.
Through using the techniques, as you know yourself, if you have the maturity in a relationship, and unfortunately, a lot of today's relationships are very sort of a trade-in mentality.
Right.
It's not upfront, but it's in the background because, if it doesn't work, I'll trade in and get another one. You know. But the reality is, if you face the music and say, okay, I'm going to work this out, and that's what we did. And we like everyone else, you always have family issues, serious family issues that come along, and I think one of the testing points for us on that was our son is a 100% disabled veteran.
Mm-hmm.
And we literally had to go to Congress to save his life and have him emergency airback back from Europe when he was dying.
Wow.
And that kind of thing really stretches you out to the max. And we were forced to communicate. As a matter of fact, it ended up in counseling. And from that, we gradually developed better techniques of communicating, and from that, we then developed our own little techniques, and so it led into these little simple techniques that do work.
Yeah,
it's very interesting to see how it works. We've seen it happen time and time again where it does work if people will be patient and work it. I mean, the thing is, to have a really good relationship, you have to work at it.
Yes.
And love is a daily decision.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you've got to work at it.
And the thing that I love about your story, and first and foremost, I want to thank your son for his service and you guys, because when people serve, the family serves. It's interesting to me in a good way that how people can take a challenge and and that's an understatement in many cases, such as yours. People can take a challenge, adversity, and go, okay, guess what? This is now an opportunity. How do we make this an opportunity? How do we get there? And you went to counseling, which led you two to counsel together, which led you two to grow, which, oh my goodness gracious, it's just, it's amazing to me.
Well, the biblical admonition is, out of every adversity comes the seeds of equal or greater benefit.
That's
and
right.
That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah,
so true.
That is absolutely right. The website is askdavidhow.com. You've got a short message on there, the free relationship test, ABC, couple of question marks. Tell us a little bit more, and there's a special offer on there as well. So let's talk a little bit more about how your site can help people open up a dialogue that maybe they didn't think was possible.
Well, the first thing, you have to agree as a couple that you have some issues that need to be resolved. And is the relationship worth it? I mean, here's the truth is, every relationship is probably the most expensive emotional involvement people will have in their life.
Yes.
I mean, unless they're tippy-toeing around and, we had one friend that was married 9 times.
Oh, my gosh. You knew my dad? I'm troubled by that.
Well, anyway, it's the content on the site would allows people to come together with recognized issues where they are having some conflict, and of course, to have a good relationship, you have to be congruent.
Yes.
And you cannot have congruency if you have conflict, because the two don't coexist, like here in faith.
Yes.
You've got to have a willingness to put your, step out and say, okay, let's be adult about this. We've got a problem. Let's take the time to analyze it. We're not going to get angry at each other. We're just going to look at the facts. And then on the site, they can go in and actually deep dive into those things, and hopefully get some resolution. And maybe with counseling. I'm a strong advocate of counseling. I agree. Where it's really serious. If there's a serious issue. Some people can let little simple things get into big issues. I had a psychologist friend. He used to call it gunny sacking, and symbolically, each person in the relationship would have a gunny sack over their shoulder.
Okay. And
every unresolved conflict would be a little pebble that would go in the bag on their back.
Oh, wow.
And the bag gets fuller and fuller and fuller, and finally, one day there's a big rock goes in there, unresolved, and boom, the bottom fractures, and out comes all the stuff. You simply cannot recover, very rarely, from that devastating effect of everything busting wide open.
Absolutely.
It's impossible. So you've got to nibble away at it, and kind of like the guy with the thumb in the dam blocking the water. You've got to try to fix it before it becomes a major issue.
One of the things my wife and I talked about, and we took a marriage counseling class through our church before we got married, which was incredibly helpful for us. And one of the things we agreed to early on was to do our best on any given day not to stuff stuff. In other words, put the pebbles in the gunny sack. Because we were both very good at that in previous relationships, and we knew from our previous experience that was a very easy way to have a train wreck. And so that was one of our first agreements, and it's gone on from there. I can see people, in fact, I'm going to have my wife and I spend some time on your site, because I think people should take a look at this before they have a problem and spend some time going, okay, well, that's kind of interesting. Well, let's see where we are today. Now, if we have an issue come up, well, we have a sense of how maybe we can address it together on David's website. So I love it, man. I love it. Congratulations on
thank you.
On sharing your gift and Sonia's gift with us.
Well, we don't, when we meet people, I've got a little saying that says, we aspire to inspire before we expire.
Love that.
And I give people a business card and say to them, you can go to the site if you want, and we'll be happy to talk with you. We don't give marriage advice because it would be illegal for me to do that. But I can certainly, as a sort of a co-conspirator in the resolution of problems, be able to help people in a confidential way. Yeah. And that's very fulfilling for us. We actually enjoy it, as long as we don't get tangled up into the mud or be drugged through the muck heap. But,
anytime you can figure out a way to pay it forward, professionally, personally, spiritually, whatever level, anytime you can figure out a way to pay it forward, is just a wonderful gift to yourselves, and obviously it goes back on the people that you're with.
That's very true. Very true. Very true.
David, I've enjoyed this so much. It's been like the world's quickest 20 minutes. And I want to encourage people to go to askdavidhow.com. You'll see pictures of this young couple 60 years ago and today, and go through the questionnaire, the relationship test, the ABCs of it, and just have a conversation. Have a conversation with it, and then take it from there. It's a wonderful gift you two have, and thank you for sharing it with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
Listen to Your 20-Minute Podcast with David Brower on the go. Downloads are available on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, any podcast app, and on our website at davidbrowervo.com/Your 20-Minute Podcast. Until next time, thank you for listening.